So today we want to give you the first out of probably many deep dives into the core of what makes our planets tick and about the planet creation. And this is tech that is developed here mainly in Frankfurt by Marco, Sasha, Carsten, of course. Basically with the Homestead demo for CitizenCon, a practical test case of what we call the V2 planet tech, which is, we are already basically at V3 now. So we kind of needed to say at one point, that is it for the demo. So we have a couple more features already in progress. And the Homestead demo, of course, was not just made because of our love of giant space worms, but also to have engineers and artists work on something that is basically a substantial test case so that we can mature our tools, our planet editor, or what we call it, the plan ad, and to basically arrive at something where the usability has grown into a mature tool set, but also the feature set, of course, with the massive object distribution, the vegetation, ecosystem painting, and terrain height map. Working with our environment artist Pascal on the ecosystems themselves, which in the case of Homestead were actually only 5 distinct ones. And my job on Homestead was as visual director, and for that I basically initialized the lighting and mood and overall feel of this, and then also worked with our environment artist Pascal on the ecosystems themselves. And I basically also every day a couple of hours spent with Marco, Sasha and Carsten on the toolset itself.
Hello, we are going to talk about planets today. Thanks to everyone on the Star Citizen subreddit and the CIG community forums for your positive feedback. We really appreciate it. Initially, we were not planning to have seamless transition from space to planets into Star Citizen. Around September, we started rewriting from scratch the CryEngine terrain system. Here you can see my first experiment of a procedural planet without any atmosphere at the end of October 2015. Then, this is our first test with atmosphere in November. Carsten Wenzel has been working on the atmospherics in clouds, as well as a number of other engine features. And here is our first public update at the end of 2015, showing the first Delamar planet version. It was mostly procedurally based, but was already integrated into the editor, so you could place landing zones on top of the planet. In February 2016, we had the first man working on the planet. At this stage, we still did not have ground details, and we still had many precision issues, as you can see in the video. So during March and April, we made a lot of progress. We can see more details when zooming into the planet, and this is a video of the first buggy driving on the planet's surface. At this stage, the planets were mostly procedural, and even though we were getting good results, it was becoming difficult to really customize the planets.
There was no diversity in the planets. It was either a big rocky planet, or a jungle planet, or a desert planet, but there was no variation in the ecosystems on this planet. And with V2, this changed. We introduced something new, which we call ecosystems. So when we talk about ecosystems, what we mean is basically, you can think of it as kind of a level of its own. It's a piece of terrain, and it covers about 4 or 8 square kilometers, you could say. And each ecosystem contains many, many different kinds of assets, which are created by the artists. Part of it is the terrain itself, like the information that defines how the terrain looks. Is it mountains, or do we have dunes, or do we have plateaus or canyons, and all this type of stuff. Then additionally to that, of course, you need all the ground textures that make up the surface of the terrain. Do you have like rocky ground or grassy ground and this type of stuff? And then on top of that, of course, you also need assets, all kinds of assets that need to be scattered in a procedural way. This cannot be done by hand if you think on a global scale. So this is all of these things come into the ecosystem. And for this, Sasha Hober developed their own editor for the engine. And within this editor, we basically, all this information is accumulated and tweaked. We tweak the height of the mountains and where which texture belongs and which assets belong together on which surface, and all this type of stuff comes together in the planet editor in the engine. And once all these ecosystems are done, you can basically take your planet, which is more or less gray at the moment, and just pick some of these ecosystems and paint them over the planet. And this is basically how the terrain is generated in the end. Of course, when this is generated, you want to make sense of it. You want to have ridge lines of mountains, and then behind you want to have some hills, and that goes into grassy lands or desert or whatever.